There's a lot of talk about open carry. The idea that a concealed handgun carry person could, doesn't have to conceal it. It's been done in other states. Some states have much more freedom on that than we do. Oklahoma has open carry. Oklahoma hasn't imploded. The sky hasn't fallen. The reality is I think if we pass this law, you'll see a few people doing that for a while just for the novelty of it, and then they'll realize that kind of carrying a gun on your hip is really a pain in the rear. It's not convenient. It's responsibility. You just kind of like So I'm for it. I think it's a lot closer to where we ought to be, but I just don't see it being a big problem. Other states have demonstrated that it's just not that big of a deal. But I do worry about I've seen people just almost have a panic attack because a pistol fell. I'll tell you a quick story. Don Garner, who's our Capitol Commission minister in Austin, so he hangs out, literally sits on the steps outside the House chamber, waiting for us to come out so he can tell us where the Bible study's going to be. And he's always wearing a suit. He's got his black carry bag where he carries all his pamphlets and everything. And one day he's sitting on the steps and he goes to stand up and his bag falls open. And his pistol goes sliding across the marble floor right there in the Capitol lobby. And there's DPS troopers standing right there, And he just almost, just like, is going to die. So, there's some things that we could do that some law enforcement person might not be so gracious to somebody in that situation. That'll get a lot of press, I believe, and rightfully so. Yeah. Fiscal responsibility. Hey, Medicaid expansion is going to be a big deal.
What about the 10th Amendment?
10th Amendment. I think that ultimately the gun issue is a way that we can assert that. I think I'm going to get very sort of academic with you real quick. The way to exercise the 10th Amendment, the best way, the most solid way, is where the federal government has tried to force us to do something. In order to enforce that, they need to depend upon local law enforcement or some state agency to be their arm of enforcement, because the federal government doesn't have the resources to do it, right? So we have constitutional authority. Prince v. U.S., we have others that says you can pass your law, federal government, but if the state doesn't want to let you use its assets to enforce it, it doesn't have to. So that's how we can assert some 10th Amendment rights. For instance, the gun control. We passed a bill in the House, it never made it to the governor's desk. It said, if you want to ban certain types of guns, sorry, go ahead. But you can't use any police officer that's owned by the state, any licensed peace officer in Texas. No. Bring all your FBI guys down to do it. And there's not but 7 of them in the whole East Texas crew. Right? So basically, if you want to ban guns, fine. Go right ahead. But you won't have you can't have the use of our jails. You can't have the use of our law enforcement. It's the ultimate, just say, you just cut the knees out. It's nullification by a different method.
Same be used if there's a presidential amnesty executive order. Could you pass something that just says you will not?
That's a great question, Jack. I've been thinking about that executive amnesty issue a lot. The president's about to do that. Basically do deferred adjudication, which it's going to be a nightmare because does the federal government have the resources to check the backgrounds of 4.5 million people to see whether they determine that they are all fitting this criteria? Where does it stop and where does it end? 4.5 million will quickly become 9 million. It'll become, everybody will have. There will be a black market business of helping you get your papers together to go in there and prove that you fit the qualifications. It'll be unreal. And who will be there to track it all down? Is a little government worker behind her desk can leave her office to go visit their apartment and find out if any of this is true? Come on. There's no way. And even if you thought that that was the right thing to do, it's unconstitutional. You just might as well burn the Constitution. It is the most unlawful act I can imagine. But here's what I fear, folks. It will not be undone. Once he does this, I don't see how we unwind it. How do we unwind it? Somebody tell me how we unwind it. They say, well, cut off the funds. They've got enough money in the president's budget that they can shove around to pay for the green cards and do this other stuff. What are they going to do? What really can Congress do between now and next week, or whenever it is that the president says he's going to do it? We have lawlessness on our hands if that happens. It is utter lawlessness. It will be irreversible. I wish somebody would tell me what we could do, because I'm really at a loss. It scares me.
McConnell said today he will not shut the government down.
Yeah, like he
Republicans will not partake in any form of shutdown of the government using the power of the purse.
So what are we going to do? So when you say that you'll never, it's kind of like what we did in Syria and Iraq, well, let's put ground troops in. Of course, now, you heard today, they're talking about putting ground troops in.
Yeah.
Hey, look, in front of Congress saying, yeah, we're thinking about putting them in, about to ask for it.
I think maybe if you learn Spanish, that would probably be better.
See? I used to know some Spanish. I wish I'd stuck with it.
I think that's going to be in all of our agendas.
Reduction of regulation, that's my favorite. That's my hobby, is finding bills that are going to create new regulations and finding ways to defeat them. When you look at what the legislature does right and what it does wrong, don't just look at what it passes. Look at what it kills. Look what it stops. Look at what it defeats. Please. You've got to know that there are a lot of phony capitalistic bills, anti-competitive bills that get presented. We'll probably have to fight the dentist lobby, over teeth whitening. Dentists their lobby wanted to make teeth whitening, the business of teeth whitening, the practice of dentistry. So you had to pay them to get your teeth whitened. It's just, that's the kind of stuff where, I've got influence at Austin. I'll just go down there and, heck, we got some more revenue coming in now. That type of thing. I don't have anything else on here. If y'all have any questions for me, I'll stop up there.
In regards to the budget, what's going to happen with the school
Lawsuit?
Lawsuit is what I was trying to think of. They're supposed to come up with some kind of decision fairly soon, aren't they?
Well, it really depends on the timing, George. I think if we get something early in the session, it's possible we do something. A lot of people think that even if we did, we'd put it off to the special session to deal with it. This is about as old as the hills itself. The left says we don't spend enough. The right says we spend a lot, but we could spend it better. It always goes to court. Now, what's amazing to me, let me tell you about the way this lawsuit started. Lawsuit started based on the budget that happened in 2011, right? That was the budget that happened after the economic recession in Texas. And so the state government took some reductions just like everybody else did. Exactly, their reductions were a lot less than the plumber and your neighbor and everybody else who weren't taking paychecks if they owned their own businesses. So everybody shrunk back. Well, so the leftists, they sued. Our local TISD joined the lawsuit, said you're not, spending any money. Now, has anybody talked to our school board about why we're suing, whether that was the right thing to do or not? And did they come to me with solutions? Did anybody come to me and say, Representative Schaefer, here's the formula we want you to use? No, they just want more money, right? And that's not all those school board members, but that's what they voted to do. So they sued, and it was based on a set of facts and testimony from that economic recession budget. Well, what happened? By the time the judge issued his ruling, we'd had a new budget, the economy had grown, We changed the school funding formula. Schools got more money, and generally, pretty happy. So what did the judge do? He reopened the testimony. Come back in and let's get more testimony on this and rehearing. And then he came back out with, now we got all that in evidence, and so now we're going to say it's unconstitutional. This guy's done this stuff before. He's a left-wing judge. So, but now it's going to go up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will pass judgment on it, and we'll go from there. So, at the end of the day, what do? You fight about education funding every time the legislature meets. And that's what we do. We try to do the best we can.
I was lecturing about the differences between the British government and the American Constitution when I was lecturing on the creation of the Constitution. And it just hit me about a month ago that we do have a House of Lords in the United States. It's the federal judiciary. They're not elected, and you can't remove them from office, and they have the ability to veto anything that you do.
First off, that's incorrect.
How?
Because if you read the Constitution, the judiciary is in position for the term of good behavior. They can be impeached.
And how long has it been since any of them were?
That's really irrelevant. That's irrelevant. The fact is, under Washington, one was impeached for cursing in the courtroom, and another one was impeached for private drunkenness.
Dang.
We should be impeaching judges.
Well, you'd have a lot of members of the House.
Man, boy, we can clean house.
In addition, the only thing that's required is the Supreme Court. It doesn't say how many.
Yeah.
The legislature today could say the Supreme Court consists of one Chief Justice and kill it.
Yeah, that's true.
It's totally at the discretion of the legislature. The legislature, there are not three co-equal branches of government. There is one legislature that is the board of directors that is chosen by the people of the United States. And the CEO at this present time, who happens to be the president, who has violated his responsibility of doing the work that the board has given him to do, the laws, should be impeached.
Yes, you should.
Just plainly for that, when you pick and choose what laws you're passing and what you're going to do, any CEO would be kicked out of his job. And right now, that president, I don't care who he is, when he takes the oath of office, he is responsible to meet or fulfill the obligation of executing the laws of the United States, period.
Yes.
Suzanne, you got a question?
Yeah, I've got two questions. One, if you raise the ceiling in the budget, is that permanent or just for a 1 year?
The Texas budget?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so her question was, if you raised the ceiling, would that be permanent or just for 1 year? Well, it's a formula. And the formula is based on your previous budget, right? So that's one of the problems with spending too much money, is it sets the floor for where you start the next time.
Oh.
Okay?
Oh.
So
Yeah.
when you bust your budget, or when you max out your budget, it means you get to, it kind of goes from there. So the answer is
Kind of yes.
kind of yes.
Well, the other question is,